So, um, imagine for a second that you are an eighth grade football coach.
Okay, high pressure right out of the gate.
Right. Yeah, you're standing on the sidelines, the stadium lights are glaring down, and, well, you are staring at a scoreboard that is objectively not your friend.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you're down by 6 points. You're stuck in your own 36-yard line, and there is exactly 1 minute and 32 seconds left on the clock.
Wow, that's a tight window.
And you have 0 timeouts. Oh, and like one more thing to add to this pressure cooker.
Yeah.
This is the last game of the regular season. So if you lose, you pack up your gear and you go home for the year.
But if you win, you make the playoff.
Exactly. So the pressure in that exact moment is, I mean, it's entirely suffocating.
It really is. It's the ultimate crucible for any leader, right? It's that precise moment where all the, abstract theory and all the practice reps suddenly collide with brutal reality.
Yes. And welcome to today's deep dive, by the way. I'm so glad you're joining us because as a fellow learner, I just love it when we find actionable insights in, well, places you might not immediately expect.
Yeah, for sure.
Today's mission is exploring this really fascinating intersection of youth football, crisis management, and grassroots community leadership. We are unpacking the introduction to the 2024 update of a book called The Church Playbook by Todd Tolson.
And, we should probably clarify right away that we're looking at this text objectively, really as a masterclass in organizational growth and human psychology.
Right, because even if you aren't a pastor, this stuff is pure gold.
Exactly. The source material is written specifically for pastors of small churches, but the behavioral patterns Tolson identifies, like how leaders react under severe pressure or how we constantly get distracted by complex solutions, those are universal mechanisms.
They really are. So let's jump right back to that football field.
Yeah.
You have 1.32 on the clock. Tolson is the coach. He needs a miracle to cover that much ground with no timeouts. So he calls what is essentially like a playground Hail Mary.
Right, desperation mode.
Yeah. He calls white, right, all go.
Yeah.
And he tells his quarterback to look for his star tight end, this kid named Tyler, who actually went on to play college ball.
Which, on paper, that's the logical move for a desperate leader. You need a massive amount of yardage in a tiny window of time, so you look for your best guy.
Makes sense, right.
Okay.
Except the pass is incomplete.
Ouch.
Yeah. So second down, he calls the exact same play, just hoping for a different result. But the pass is almost intercepted.
Oh, man.
Third down, he calls the same play yet again. Because, when you're backed up that far and the clock is bleeding out, your playbook gets incredibly thin.
Yep, your options just vanish.
Exactly. And again, another incomplete pass. So now it is fourth down. There are 26 seconds left. The season is effectively over. Tolson is standing there, literally about to call that same doomed Hail Mary a fourth time.
Wow.
But then his 13-year-old star running back, this kid named Mugen, comes running over to the sideline. He looks at his coach and just demands, "Coach, give me the ball. I can do this."
That's, the psychological contrast Tolson points out in that specific moment is just profound.
It really is.
Yeah, he notes that this 13-year-old kid knew it was fourth down. He knew the entire season was riding on this one single play, and yet he actively wanted the burden.
He asked for it.
Right. And Tolson points out a very uncomfortable truth about human nature here. When the game is on the line, like really on the line, most people actively do not want the ball.
They want to completely avoid the blame. If you take the handoff and you get tackled short of the line, the season ending is entirely your fault.
Exactly. Most people want to shrink back into the, anonymity of the sidelines. They want the outcome to be someone else's responsibility.
So they can say, well, hey, I ran my route. I did my job.
It wasn't my fault, yeah. But Mugen had this rare, if it's to be, it's up to me mindset. He was willing to absorb the entirety of the blame if he failed.
I do have to challenge the romanticism of this just a little bit, though.
Oh, sure.
Because, we love heroism in sports movies.
Yeah.
But in reality, isn't putting the entire season on the shoulders of one 13-year-old a massive organizational risk?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm picturing this like a high-stakes corporate pitch. You're trying to win a massive client, the pitch is going terribly, and everyone in the boardroom is looking at their shoes to avoid eye contact with the boss.
I've been in that room.
Right. And if the junior copywriter suddenly stands up and says, hey, let me pitch, it's undeniably brave, but it's also terrifying for the person actually in charge of the company.
It is entirely terrifying. And that fear is the exact bridge Tolson builds for his readers. He uses this moment on the turf as a really harsh mirror for leadership.
How so?
Well, he pivots from Mugen's courage to ask casters a very pointed, uncomfortable question. He asks, do you actually have that whatever it takes mentality?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, are you willing to demand the ball when the game is on the line, or are you secretly looking for someone else to blame for your organization's decline?
And the examples he uses from the text are brutally specific to his audience, too. He asks, when the most generous family in your organization packs up and leaves, do you still have that extreme ownership?
Right. Or when your most reliable staff member goes down the street for a higher paying position, are you still willing to do whatever it takes?
Tolson is really tapping into the immense psychological weight of grassroots leadership here. He highlights the profound isolation of the role.
Yeah, he notes that literally nobody in the world truly understands the life of a pastor except another pastor.
Because the lifestyle, the unrelenting expectations, the constant emotional whiplash of dealing with people's highest highs and lowest lows, it's highly unique.
It is. So when gossip gets out of control or, when your leadership board doesn't have your back, the natural human instinct is to drop the ball, protect yourself, and walk away. But Tolson is demanding you adopt the Mugen mindset. Give me the ball.
But, deciding to take the blame is one thing. Mugen still needs an actual play to run.
Right. Motivation isn't a strategy.
Exactly. And what Tolson calls next completely contradicts standard crisis management. He details exactly what he chose not to do in that high-pressure moment, which was running a trick play.
The deliberate rejection of complexity.
Yes, he explicitly says he didn't pull out some complex, flashy trick play. He didn't call the Statue of Liberty play where the quarterback fakes a throw and secretly hands the ball behind his back.
Right, no movie magic.
No triple reverse, no annexation of Puerto Rico from Little Giants.
Yeah.
And he certainly didn't just make something up on the spot. Drawing chaotic routes in the dirt like a rookie coach who gets his playbook from a John Madden video game.
Which really goes against the grain for a lot of leaders.
It does.
When we face a complex, seemingly impossible crisis, our default assumption is that we need an equally complex, highly sophisticated solution to match it.
Right, like fighting fire with some crazy futuristic chemical foam.
Exactly. But Tolson argues the exact opposite. Trick plays require an immense amount of perfect coordination. If one player is like a half second late on a misdirection, the entire play implodes.
Plus, he points out that complex plays require your team to be mentally fresh.
And that is the mechanical reason trick plays fail in a crisis. Under immense stress, with 26 seconds on the clock, nobody on that field is mentally fresh.
Their cognitive load is totally maxed out.
Yes. Fear, adrenaline, physical exhaustion, they severely reduce working memory. Tolson argues that in a crisis, complexity actively increases your chance of losing.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because this translates beautifully to modern organizational leadership, specifically what Tolson critiques as shiny object syndrome.
Oh, the apps.
Yes, pastors and really leaders in any field constantly fall for some new piece of software or a trendy management app that promises like 17 levels of automated engagement.
Right, you buy it thinking it will save your team.
Only to realize it was built by software engineers for software engineers. You practically need a PhD in computer science to run the back end. It's expensive, it's time-consuming, and when the pressure's actually on, nobody on your staff knows how to use it.
The shiny new app is the trick play.
Exactly.
It looks phenomenal on a vendor's social media feed, just like a college football team running a fake toss into a reverse looks great on a highlight reel. But for a grassroots team struggling in the trenches, it's a massive distraction that just leads to execution failure.
So instead of a trick play, Tolson tells Mugen to go into the huddle and call black, right, heavy 26 power. Right. To explain this mechanically to anyone who doesn't watch football, this is basically the least deceptive play in the game. It is a brute force formation.
You pack your biggest players tight together, you create a wall of bodies, and you just push straight ahead.
The defense knows exactly what is coming. There is zero trickery.
But it was a play they had run thousands of times.
Thousands. So Mugen takes the handoff. He follows his fullback through this massive hole created by the offensive line, weaves through the secondary traffic, and he runs 64 yards for the game-winning touchdown.
Unbelievable.
The quote Tolson uses to explain why this worked is honestly, arguably the most important sentence in the entire introduction.
Oh, I know the one. He writes, "We didn't practice that play over and over again until we got it right. We practiced that play until we could not get it wrong."
Practiced until we could not get it wrong. That is the fundamental difference between amateur and professional execution.
Absolutely, because when the opponent's defense dropped back into a prevent defense, which is a formation designed entirely to stop desperate, deep, complex passes, Tolson's team just ran the ball straight up the middle.
Mugen didn't even have to think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The offensive line didn't have to process a new blocking scheme. Simplicity scales under pressure, complexity breaks.
That's such a great takeaway. But let's pivot to the reality of the playing field Tolson is actually writing for.
Yeah.
Because we have this excellent football metaphor, but the demographic he's addressing faces very specific kind of pressure.
Yeah, the statistics he provides about his audience are honestly staggering.
They really are.
The landscape is drastically different from the cultural assumption of what a church looks like. The media usually portrays these massive megachurches with thousands of attendees, professional coffee shops and arena-style lighting.
Right, the concert vibe.
Exactly. But Tolson provides a striking reality check. Of the roughly 300,000 churches in the United States, 90% of them have fewer than 100 people attending.
90%. I mean, that means the vast majority of these organizations are small, highly localized, and incredibly fragile grassroots communities.
Highly fragile.
Tolson shares a deeply personal story from his own childhood to illustrate why leading a group of that size is so delicate and why using the wrong metrics can actually destroy a community.
Ah, yes. The Friend Day parable.
Yeah. So Tolson tells the story of being a seventh grader at Central Southern Baptist in Tucson, Arizona. His church hires a sharp new pastor who is just full of great ideas.
As new leaders usually are.
Right. And this pastor casts a massive vision for an upcoming Sunday, branding it Friend Day. The goal, he announces to the congregation, is to get 100 people in the building.
Which for a small church is a big leap.
Huge. Tolson actually notes that the number 100 sounded so impossibly huge to him as a kid that he literally gasped out loud during the service.
That's so funny.
So the pastor preaches about it for weeks, invitations go out, the enthusiasm is super contagious. But then Friend Day actually arrives.
Yeah.
And they get 80 people.
Which is where we have to really examine how leaders define success and failure. Because Tolson notes two specific memories from that Sunday afternoon.
Right.
First, they had 80 people, which meant they mathematically missed the pastor's goal of 100. And second, everybody went home feeling like an absolute failure.
They completely ignored the fact that they had nearly doubled their regular attendance in a single day.
Yes. They doubled the size of their community, and they felt depressed about it.
And the tragic epilogue to this story in the text is that this young visionary pastor eventually got exhausted, resigned from the ministry entirely, and that church ultimately closed its doors for good.
It is a devastating example of how arbitrary, overly ambitious goals, those massive moonshots we hear glorified in startup culture, can psychologically reframe actual success as a failure.
It's so dangerous.
It really is. When an organization is that small, the psychological capital of the community is its single most valuable asset. If you drain that capital by constantly failing to hit arbitrary numbers, you just breed exhaustion and resentment among your most loyal volunteers.
But let me push back on that for a second, because I think a lot of people listening might be thinking, wait a minute. If you are a small organization trying to make a big impact in your community, shouldn't you swing for the fences?
It's a common thought.
Right. Shouldn't you set those massive, hairy, audacious goals to inspire people to action?
It's a fair challenge, but Tolson is arguing for strategic, manageable growth rather than demoralizing hype. The Friend Day goal of 100 wasn't based on their mechanical capacity to actually welcome and integrate those people,
It was just a nice round number.
Exactly. Tolson argues that for organizations under 100 people, morale is easily broken by unachieved hype. You don't need a moonshot. You need black, heavy 26 power.
Not in the play.
Right. You need to execute the foundational basics flawlessly so the team feels the momentum of consistent, sustainable wins.
And this brings us out of the metaphors and into the actual mechanics. Golson doesn't just tell his readers to keep it simple. The core of his playbook focuses on 6 strict, honestly unglamorous principles designed specifically to get a church from 0 to 200 people.
Yeah, and he explicitly warns his readers that breaking past 200 people is an entirely different animal, and that his book is not designed for that next phase.
That limitation shows incredible focus, I think.
It does. He clarifies that this is a book of structural mechanics. It's meant to be read chapter by chapter with immediate action taken. It is not a replacement for their spiritual foundation. He assumes they already have the right heart.
He's just offering the operational X's and O's.
Exactly.
So let's actually walk through these 6 principles, because they are the real-world equivalent of that simple brute force football play. These are the mechanics of sustainable grassroots growth. Principle 1 is mastering a single point of entry. Instead of confusing newcomers with a dozen different programs and ministries, you create one clear, undeniable front door for the community.
Which naturally lowers the barrier to entry and reduces decision fatigue for a new guest.
Exactly. Principle 2 is the ruthless 48-hour follow-up protocol. This isn't like a flashy marketing campaign. It is the rigorous mechanical discipline of personally contacting every single new person within 2 days of them showing up.
Because people stay because someone remembered their name, not because of a light show.
Right. Principle 3 focuses on empowering volunteer ownership rather than defaulting to staff delegation. You don't just hire people to solve your systemic issues. You build a culture where volunteers own the execution of the mission.
And that directly addresses the financial fragility of a small organization. Hiring prematurely often leads to financial panic.
Which leads perfectly to Principle 4, operating with debt-free, zero-friction agility. Financial stress forces leaders to make desperate trick play decisions. Keeping overhead incredibly low protects the vision.
That makes total sense.
Principle 5 is maintaining a hyperlocal focus. You don't try to save the entire city. You focus intensely on the literal neighborhood you are sitting in.
Start where you are.
Yes. And finally, Principle 6 is establishing one clear, repeatable weekly rhythm. You do one simple gathering exceptionally well, rather than juggling 5 mediocre programs throughout the week.
You know, when you look at those 6 principles, they are decidedly unglamorous. You will never go viral on social media for executing a 48-hour follow-up protocol.
Well, definitely not.
But that is the essence of Heavy 26 power. These principles rely on execution and discipline, not hype and trickery.
We do have to address the timeline here, though, because Tolson originally wrote this playbook back in 2016.
Right.
And as we all know, the world changed fundamentally a few years later. The text actually acknowledges the extreme turmoil the country experienced post-2020.
The pandemic forced massive shifts everywhere.
Huge shifts. Organizations had to figure out how to manage online services practically overnight. Many churches experienced steep declines in attendance, or, they simply closed altogether. So the critical question pastors constantly ask Tolson is, does a playbook of simple mechanics written in 2016 still work in this highly digital, fractured post-2020 reality?
It is the ultimate stress test for his methodology.
It really is. And Tolson's answer is a resounding yes. He actually provides a literal proof of concept from the year 2023, which is the climax of his argument in the introduction.
How did he do?
In 2023, he plants a brand new church, Courageous Church in Joshua, Texas. And the starting metrics for that organization on day 1 are just brutal.
How brutal.
He writes that they had 0 people, 0 money, 0 staff, 0 building, and 0 name recognition.
Wow. The ultimate blank slate. And honestly, a highly stressful environment where the temptation to run a trick play, like maybe a massive, expensive digital ad campaign, would be overwhelming.
Absolutely overwhelming. But he applies his own advice. He doesn't invent a trick play. He just runs those 6 simple principles relentlessly. He focuses on the hyper-local community, the strict follow-up, the repeatable weekly rhythm.
And what happened?
By day 100, they launched Courageous Church with over 225 people.
That is a striking validation of his core thesis.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in an era that is arguably more complex and more distracted than ever before, the response to that complexity isn't a more complicated strategy. The response is an almost relentless, boring commitment to the fundamentals.
So if we pull all these threads together, from this deep dive from the football field in the 4th quarter, to the tragedy of Friend Day, to the meticulous execution of those 6 principles in Texas, what are the key takeaways we can extract no matter what kind of organization you are actually leading?
I'd say there are 3 distinct pillars.
Okay, lay them out.
First is extreme ownership, or the Mugen mindset. You have to be the leader willing to say, give me the ball, accepting the risk of failure rather than shrinking back into the comfort of the sidelines.
This is true. What's the second?
Second is a deliberate rejection of complexity in a crisis.
Yeah.
When the game is on the line, trick plays and shiny new software solutions are traps. They just drain your cognitive load when you need it most.
Right. And the third?
Third, it's about mastering the simple mechanics. Practicing the unglamorous basics until you literally cannot get them wrong. Real growth comes from sustainable execution, not from a one-off friend day moonshot.
That is such a powerful summary. So look closely at your own organization right now, whether it's your business, your community group, or heck, even your family dynamics.
Yeah.
Are you setting arbitrary, massive friend day moonshot goals that are secretly destroying your team's morale under the guise of being visionary?
It's a tough mirror to look into.
It is.
Mm.
Because maybe the bravest thing you can do right now isn't inventing a brilliant, complicated new strategy to save the day. Maybe it's just having the discipline to run the boring, unglamorous play that actually works.
That's a question every leader really needs to answer.
It sure is. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.